All right, so the guest speaker today would be Austin Roach. You probably saw him last year because it's a new year now. But yeah, he's come to speak, and all I say is just preach the word.
Awesome, thank you. I noticed just now that the podium is leaning a little bit this way, so if you don't mind, I'll kind of just lean this way through the entire sermon today. Like he said, my name is Austin Roach. I'm extremely happy to be here with you all today, and I'm excited for this sermon. I didn't know what I was going to preach on. I usually go to several different churches throughout the year and preach and speak for different events, or I'll even do Sunday school lessons. And for the last few weeks, we've been traveling for Christmas, and then I've been to Tennessee and Kentucky and a few other places. So I've just been traveling around. So it's kind of been a little hectic. And then I started to settle down a little bit. I was just saying, okay, what am I going to talk about? And I noticed today is January 2nd. So I thought it would be appropriate to throw in a little bit of a New Year's theme to today's sermon. Just a real quick question. How many of you have ever made a New Year's resolution? It's always a good topic, okay? How many in here? Okay, everybody, pretty much everybody. I've made a couple New Year's resolutions. Some of them have been, actually most of them have been failures. Some of them have been very successful. I remember last year my New Year's resolution was that I was going to start working out, and I decided that I was going to do that on January 2nd of last year. It was a failure until about February 27th, somewhere in there. I remember the day, and I finally said, okay, you know what? I'm actually going to go do this. And it lasted for a few months, and then I was just like, oh no, I've got summer camp coming up and whatever else. And this is the season of trying to make promises to ourselves that we're going to do something for the future. We're going to do better in something. And typically what that looks like is you can't look forward to doing something better without looking behind and see what's happened, right? Most of the time this year, we get past Christmas, and then the week after Christmas, we start evaluating 2021. And no one really wants to think about 2021 or 2020 or everything that's happened with the pandemic or whatever else. And there's a lot of things that have happened. A lot of people have lost family members. A lot of people have had a good year. A lot of people have had bad years. And so we start to think back on our year, everything that's happened. Honestly, I thought back on my year and everything that I've learned in this past year. And I'm just honestly very, very thankful that God has put me in the place that I'm in today, because I think there's a lot of life lessons and a lot of lessons that I've learned in the past year alone that has made me the person I am today. And I would say that it's the same for a lot of you. Maybe you can look back on 2021 and see, okay, who was I at the beginning of 2021? And now who am I at the end of 2021? Or, and you can take it back even further, who are you today as a Christian? And how did you arrive at this point? I was talking to some friends 2 nights ago. We had a New Year's Eve gathering. I didn't know these folks, but it was me, the girl that I'm seeing, and then 2 friends of hers. We all just decided to play some games for New Year's Eve and watch the ball drop and everything else. But we started talking about some of the things that they've been going through here lately. They're thinking about moving from North Carolina back to Virginia. And we started talking about some of the struggles that they've been going through. And it was really interesting for me to just sit there and listen to them, because the struggles that they were going through, the lady that I'd met, the 2 friends, she works at a church in North Carolina. And she said, it's very, very tough for me. She said, I'm 24 years old. I'm right around that age group of a young adult ministry that we have at church, but I'm also considered one of the staff at the church. So every time I go to the young adults ministry, people are kind of looking at me to maybe help lead the class or whatever else. And I said, I experienced the same thing when I was a youth minister at my church in Kentucky. I was also that age, about 22, 23 years old, and I wanted to go be a part of the young adults group, but it was extremely tough for me to do that because people would start asking me questions or want me to lead whatever the activity was that we were doing. And so I started to relate a little bit, and so I was able to give a little bit of advice in that, and then also the moving. There were some difficult things with they were like, well, we don't want to burn bridges here with the relationships that we have, and so they just keep talking about their process of possibly moving from North Carolina up to here. And so it was very interesting for me to see exactly what I'd been going through the last couple years in youth ministry and then just give them some advice. And it's the same for us as Christians today. You and I are both in the seats that we are today, or the places that we are today, because of something good or bad that's happened in our life that has drawn us closer to Jesus. And all of us have had someone in our life that you could point to right now. And in fact, why don't you go ahead and think about this person? Think about the one person, or maybe a couple people in your life right now that you could point to and say, I'm probably who I am today because of this person's guidance or this person's discipleship in my life. For me, mine was my best friend, Ben Tucker. And we'll talk about my relationship with him here in just a second. But this is a little bit, I'm kind of trying to draw you or shape for you the theme for today. It's a little bit of, we're in the season of New Year resolutions, looking back on what we've learned, and so we can look forward to the future on what we should be doing. And so what I'd like to do today is kind of share with you a little bit about the discipleship that's taken place in my life, and then also give you 5 lessons that I've learned this year alone, back in 2021, 5 lessons that I've learned this year that I think has grown me spiritually and shaped me into who I am going into 2022. Sound good? All right. So my relationship with my best friend, Ben Tucker. I like talking about my best friend, Ben, because to be honest, I haven't had a better friend and mentor in my life. A lot of people are impacted by youth ministers. A lot of people are impacted by camp. And in fact, I was impacted by Camp Hit in a big way and my youth minister in a big way. But something awesome happened when I was a kid. We were going to County Line Christian Church. A lot of you may know Dean Ashby or Tim Maness. We were going to County Line Christian Church when I was in middle school. And I got involved one weekend in a service project. And I didn't really know anything about the church, but I knew Ben was there. And so we started to get involved in the service project with this church. And then eventually we started going to that church. That's Cornerstone Church of Christ in Chatham. And from there, I started to build a bigger relationship with my friend Ben. My youth minister was great. He poured into us, he poured into all of us, but one of the things that I love about the youth ministry at Cornerstone was our youth minister didn't directly pour into me. He poured into an older group of high schoolers, and that older group poured into me, and then I kind of did the same thing for the younger ones underneath me. And so Ben actually had a conversation with Brian one day. Ben was very aggravated with me. I was annoying. I was not a polite, I ran my mouth a lot. I remember always picking on Ben, even though he's about 4.5 years older than I am, and he was also at the time probably about 3 foot taller than me. I would always give Ben a hard time, but our relationship grew because our youth minister Brian, he said, Ben, I want you to take Austin fishing. And Ben did not want to do that. That was something that was extremely impactful in my life because Ben started to take me fishing. The goal in that wasn't for Ben to just all of a sudden say, okay, now that we're fishing and I got you, let's open up our Bibles to Matthew and I'm going to teach you about Jesus. The important thing that happened in that relationship with Ben was we went fishing, and as things started to interrupt my life, or I started struggling with sin in my life, I had someone to confide in, and I also had someone who was there to disciple me. I had someone who had been there a few years before me, who was going to work me through those stages in life. Some of the questions that I had was, I really don't understand why my parents are doing this. I'm aggravated with them. This is what I think about them. I don't understand what they're doing here, whatever else. And so I think it was good for Ben, because he looked back on some of that and said, look, man, I've been there. Here's what I think your response should be as a Christ follower. And so this season of life, I've looked back on my relationship with Ben. I've looked back on my relationship with my parents. Again, I had a conversation with that couple the other night, and we actually brought it up this morning in our Sunday school class. My mother is probably one of the most, probably the biggest spiritual influencer in my life, especially growing up. There have been seasons where I really don't feel settled about something. My move from being a youth minister to being a camp manager now was a little tough. I related to what that couple was talking about the other night when they said, we don't want to burn bridges. We've built relationships here. It's very tough for us to move now. We don't feel settled with this. We believe this is where we need to be, but at the same time, something's not settling about it. And I told them I've been there, and I remember what my mom always told me. Pray about it. Because through prayer and petition, God is going to provide a peace to you that surpasses all understanding. And so there have been influencers in my life. There's been a lot of influencers in my life that have played a role in my life to make me the person that I am here today. My question for a lot of you today, especially for you all that are going into 2022, no matter where you are in life, is have you considered being the person that you have always needed? Many of you, all of us, have that one person in our life, or maybe a couple of people in our life that have been influential. Many of us have been discipled. That's the word. That's the word we're looking for. It's discipleship. Everyone in here probably knows the Great Commission, right? Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you, and surely I will be with you always to the end of the age. One of the things I love about that verse is the first sentence where it says, go and make disciples. It is better read, in its translation, it is better read as you go. As you go, make disciples. As you go fishing. As you go to work. You're a machinist. You are a teacher. You're a dentist. As you go, make disciples. As you have people over to your house for a New Year's Eve gathering. Make disciples. Discipleship is extremely important. It's kind of one of those things that we talk about in the church that we all should be on the same page with it, but sometimes I wonder if we've kind of missed the mark a little bit with teaching discipleship in the church, and how truly important it is for us to grasp and understand what it means for every Christian to be a disciple maker. Now, many of you, including myself, in the past, I've thought to myself, I'm not a disciple maker. And then I kind of got this calling into ministry, and I said, okay, now I'm a disciple maker. That's not necessarily true. If you are a Christian, if you are a Christ follower, you are a disciple. And if you are a disciple, You are a disciple maker, because guess what? Disciples make disciples who make disciples. The Great Commission is a never-ending cycle. It really isn't. That's why the church is here today. That's why you are sitting where you are sitting today, is because someone poured into my mother. And that someone who poured into my mother was also poured into by someone else. Each of us could come up with some kind of a spiritual tree where you could see the roots of the discipleship that's happened in our lives. It's come down to me, Austin Roach. Now, who am I going to carry that to? And so, right now, in this season of life, in 2022, it is more crucial than ever for us to step up as Christians to make disciples. I saw a poll the other day that came out from one of our Brotherhood Christian universities. At the beginning of 2021, I believe it was, if I remember correctly, because it was about a 10% difference. At the beginning of 2021, they asked a question I believe it was just a unanimous, maybe 1,000 ministers. Have you considered leaving ministry? 72% responded, absolutely not. By the end of 2021, it had dropped down to 62%. It is an extremely tough time to be a minister in the church. It's an extremely tough time to be a disciple maker. It's an extremely tough time to be a Christian, which is why this is the most important time for us to step up and be disciple makers. That is one of the biggest things. So that's one area of this sermon that I wanted to talk to you all about today. That's one of the things that, kind of leading into this sermon, leading into the last couple weeks or so, I thought to myself, this is something I've evaluated from the last year. This is something I've evaluated on my whole life. Is how did I get to this point in my faith? And how can I share that with you all today? The second part of my sermon today is the 5 lessons that I've learned in this past year. Okay? So let's dive into that. The 5 lessons that Austin Roach has learned from 2021. Okay? Number 1, relationships matter. This year and maybe even the year before, it's really started off with everyone separate. Right? Everyone separate. It is, if it hasn't been obvious to you yet, I wouldn't be here without people putting in the time. Discipleship, people putting in the time, fathers and mothers investing in their children's spiritual life, best friends investing in each other. It's an investment of your time, but the return is extremely beneficial. I'm the manager of Camp Pitt, right? What I do is summer camp. That's my thing. We have an awesome facility, a pool. We have Gaga ball, right? They're back there, yes. We have a lot of fun games. We have a great pond. And guess what? I can advertise all of that stuff. You want to know why kids come back to camp? It's the relationships. Has absolutely nothing to do with the pool. Even though a lot of people might think, well, I don't know, the pool's pretty awesome, or whatever else, the playground, you can name a lot of fun things, and things that I can even advertise and say, hey, look, we're going to have this in the future. Come to camp. That might be a hook, line, and sinker, but it's not why people keep coming back. People keep coming back because of the relationships. Jesus' whole ministry revolved around mentoring and pouring into 12 men. That's how he knew it was going to start. That's the rock hitting the water to start the ripple effect. I'm going to invest in these 12 men. 3 of them were his best friends. And one of them, he refers to him as his beloved, John. Relationships are where discipleship happens. And we are all called to make disciples. Number two, second thing that I've learned from 2021, and again, this is just all reflection on the past year, things that I just thought, man, that's really impacted me this year. Keep the main thing the main thing. Have you guys ever heard that saying before? Keep the main thing the main thing. I think a lot of Christians, a lot of even ministers, a lot of Christians have forgotten what the main thing is. Now everyone's like, okay, well, what's the main thing? You guys already know it. I'm going to read this for you. You don't have to turn to it, but it's in Matthew 22, verses 36 through 40, if you'd like to follow along. Matthew 22, verses 36 through 40. It says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in all the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All of the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." To me, out of all the law, out of all the things that teacher could have said, that Jesus could have said, which is the greatest? Love the Lord your God. Now, he says here, love the Lord your God. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it." The second isn't lesser. He says the second is like it. Sometimes when we think first and second, we think first place, second place. So don't get that confused. First, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Second is like it, the first. Love your neighbor as yourself. Keep the main thing the main thing. So without this, without love, remember this. Without love, we're just clanging cymbals, a noisy gong. Loving God and loving people is like connecting to the vine. You guys know that scripture? I'm the vine, you are the branches. Once we genuinely start loving God with all of our heart, soul, and mind, and loving our neighbors as ourselves, we naturally become fruit bearers. I've looked back on past years, I've looked back on moments this year, and I will just say this: I've been the person who spent more time painting a fake apple to make it look good rather than being the fruit off the vine. A lot of us have done that. A lot of us have been the Christian that I'm just going to paint a good-looking apple, and now you can notice how I look as a Christian, but the moment someone takes a bite into it, they can tell whether you are a follower or not. Is that love there? I'm still working on these, by the way. These aren't something that I've looked back on in 2021 and said, oh, well, good, now I fixed those. I don't have to do it anymore. I don't have to go through this anymore. No, this is always going to be a continual thing. And guess what? Discipleship plays an important role in that as well. All right, number 3, okay? Prayer is the most intimate thing that you can do. I'd say the last 10 years or so, especially the first couple years in my ministry, I believe I prayed, but I don't think that I took every matter to God. I think there was a lot of times where I I would pray out of habit and pray because I'm supposed to, rather praying because I want to, or praying because I know for a fact God is going to answer me. And I believe that. My prayer life has changed a lot in 2021. And it's because I've learned a few things. God wants to hear you. Do you believe that today? God wants to hear you, and He wants to talk to you. He wants you to share your heart with Him. He doesn't want you to just go and sit off to the side or move further away from Him. He wants you to bring all of your matters to Him. We address God as Father in prayer for a reason. Our Father who art in heaven. When Jesus gave that model, it wasn't a strict model for us to just, you say these exact words every time you pray. No. It was an important instruction to say, look, this is what your prayer life should look like. This is what talking to God looks like. Father. Jesus stepped away to have conversations with His Father all the time. There were a lot of random times where Jesus would get done with a miracle or have moments in His ministry where He's just like, okay, I'm going to go pray to my Father. I'm going to go talk to Him for hours, not just a couple of minutes. It's been hard for me this year to spend more than 10 minutes. That was kind of a challenge that I've given myself this year. I'm going to spend 10 minutes or more in prayer time every time I talk to my Father. And sometimes it's tough. I start thinking about what else do I talk to Him. But when I mean that He wants to hear about everything that's going on in your life, talk to Him about everything that's happening in your life. It's the most intimate thing that you can do. We all have walls that we build up in our lives to where, just like Adam and Eve, we would rather go and hide than approach the throne or approach our Father. Even though we know He's near, we would rather try to cover ourselves up and hide. And that is the opposite of what our Father wants us to do. Prayer is the most intimate thing that you can do. Number 4, be still. Anybody have an issue with being still? Yep, I knew it. There we go. My nephews have a hard time being still, okay? They're 3 and 4 years old. Anderson and Owen, they can't be still. I took Owen hunting the other day. Bad idea. That was not a good thing. It was 2 of us responsible for him, my grandfather and my nephew Owen, and I really couldn't figure out which one I was babysitting that day. It might have been both of them, but there was at one point I was walking into the woods, and I walked probably about 150 yards away. The entire time we were hunting, my grandfather was telling me, okay, now Owen, you got to be quiet, okay, because the deer can hear a lot better than we can. Okay, all right. And it was constantly, okay, Owen, you gotta be a little bit more quiet. And he'll quiet down, and then he'll forget and just randomly, Paul, what are we doing out here? Where are the deer at? And so I was about 150 to 200 yards away, and I could hear them the entire time. I thought to myself, I'm not going to see a deer. But it was still sweet. It was still nice to be out. But it's so difficult for us to be still. It is extremely difficult for us to be still. Because you think about it, we as an American culture, we find success in busyness. Right? Ever had this conversation with someone? Hey, how have you been? Been busy. That's good. I've had that conversation numerous times, okay? It's really odd. Hey, how have you been doing? You see this person maybe 5 times, maybe out of the course of a few months. Hey, how have you been? Haven't been doing a thing. Oh, okay. Lucky you. I'm not sure how, usually it has something to do. A follow-up is, I've been busy, or we find success in someone being busy. I think it's part of our American culture. It's also difficult for us to sit down and be still in times with God. We have so many things on our minds. We've got so many things that we do. We're essentially programmed to either be on our phone, try to find time for ourselves. All of us have some kind of a routine. My dad had a routine when I was in middle school and high school. It was get up at 4 a.m., go to work, get home by 4:30, go change clothes, get ready for supper. I'm going to watch the news till supper. Supper, Andy Griffith Show, some other show, off to bed by 8. Do the same thing again the next day, right? His time with the Lord was typically on his drives, but he made time to be still with God. And so from Psalm 46, verse 10, I want to read that for you all. That doesn't just come from nowhere. It comes from an important scripture. Psalm 46, verse 10, he says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." Not your status at your job, not all the different successes that you can find in your life. God will be exalted. At the end of the day, it's kind of going back to what's the main thing. Be still and know that He is God. Okay, thing number 5 that Austin has learned in 2021. Don't ignore the Spirit. Matthew 26, verse 40, starting with verse 40, going through to 43. And this is when Jesus is in the garden, Gethsemane. He's about to be captured, arrested, taken to the cross, okay? And many of you know this story or this section of Scripture. He tells his disciples to stay awake. Because what's Jesus doing here? He's praying, right? Kind of going back to earlier, the most intimate thing that you can do is pray. Jesus, in this moment of Scripture, he's off praying. And he asks his disciples, his apostles, his followers that are there with him, his closest friends, stay awake and pray with me. So Jesus comes back, okay, after a moment of prayer, and in verse 40 this happens. He said, "Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. There's been a numerous of times, not just in 2021, but in my life where I know the Spirit is encouraging me or telling me, you need to do this. And I've ignored it. Because I felt like I deserve to be more comfortable than follow the Spirit. And in this scenario, the apostle said, I would rather sleep. I would rather catch up on sleep. And that's a comfortable thing. That's, they're probably exhausted. There's a lot of traveling that's been done. It's probably a very exhausting day. They chose to sleep rather than listen to Jesus' commands. And Jesus' comment on that was, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And I can tell you, there's a number of times where I've gone down the road and thought to myself, give that person money. And I've come up with almost every excuse not to give that person money or buy them something. You all know what I'm talking about, because I guarantee you every Christian has come to that point. I believe God and the Spirit provide us those moments in our spiritual walk with Him. Opportunity, and then we have a choice to make of whether we're going to follow through with something. And I've come up with every excuse. Oh man, the person sitting there at the light, I should stop. McDonald's is right there, I should stop and buy him something. Oh man, I just turned left and I don't see anywhere to turn around for a while. And man, I'm just in such a rush. I gotta go. I'm supposed to be there in 30 minutes. You come up with every reason to keep yourself comfortable or busy or whatever it is, and you start to ignore the Spirit. My encouragement for you today is do not ignore the Spirit. When the Spirit prompts you to do something, follow through with it. Those are the 5 lessons that I've learned in 2021. A lot of them have to do with lessons learned from other people. A lot of them have to do with something happened in my life, something bad happened in my life, and I had to learn this lesson either by myself or through someone else. And so my challenge for you today really is 2 things. It's 2 parts of the sermon. The first one is, how are you going to disciple someone in 2022? How are you going to walk with someone through this upcoming year, the next several months, whatever it is, so that maybe there are important lessons that a lot of people have to learn that you have some of the guidance for. And then the second thing, I believe my challenge for you today would be take some time to reflect on some of the things that you've learned within the last year. Write them down. It is good practice to look back on who you've been this last year and where you're going. Now, I don't necessarily always agree with New Year's resolutions, because it's a once-a-year thing that a lot of people in America do, but for us as Christians, we are renewing our hearts day by day. It's not a once-a-year thing, right? It's not just once a Sunday thing, you know. We're renewing our hearts and being transformed into Christ-likeness every single day. So that's my encouragement and my challenge for you all today. Let's pray, and that'll be my part. Heavenly Father, Lord, we love you so much. Father, I'm so thankful for what you've done in my life. I'm so thankful for how you've guided me in my life. I'm thankful for the people that you've placed in my life, Father. People like Ben, like my mother. I'm thankful for their spiritual guidance in my life. And Father, we give all the glory to you. Father, I pray that my words have meant something today, that it's encouraged and challenged, and that we can all step away today and learn how we can grow close to you in a better way. Father, we love you so much. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.